gentlemen, my next speaker is Lorian Gamoff from Bank Ki-moon, and he's going to tell us about Bitcoin. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and he's essentially going to unpack it for you. Is it a fad, or is this really something that's going to change how the world works?
Thank you everybody for coming here. Thank you for gathering around and listening to this topic. What I want to do is I want to expand on some of the ideas that Fazam gave us. This is a very interesting topic. It's a very topical topic. I'm sure you've been hearing about this sort of thing, this Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency thing now for weeks, if not months, if not years. And obviously there's a lot of excitement and a lot of hype and a lot of hope about how this can transform our lives and maybe make us rich. So what I want to do is I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. I'm going to not talk about Fazam's perspective because I think he covered that idea of money well. What I want to do is I want to talk about the potential implications of this technology. So I founded Bank Ki-moon about 3 years ago because everybody started talking about, especially from a corporate point of view, about this word blockchain. So I'm sure you've heard about blockchain as much as you're hearing about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and you always wondered, what's the difference? Like, what am I doing? What am I getting involved with? What's the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain? So I'm going to just sort of tease apart the topic. I want to give you a much better understanding, and then you can leave here, as Fazam said, leave here and go and look into it. Because as all technologies come along, you know, they seem confusing and strange, and if you decide to ignore it, then you could easily be left behind. So I want to give you a quick quote, though. I love quotes from an author called Douglas Adams. He wrote The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Have any of you read that? And he says in the He says in this quote, he says, anything that's invented when you're born is normal and ordinary and dull and boring. Anything that's invented between the ages of 15 and 35 is new and exciting, and you could potentially get a career in it. But anything that's invented after the age of 35 is strange and unusual and against the normal order of things and can't be trusted. And that's just how it is. If you just look back throughout human history, human beings have always created and built new things. But even though we love upgrades and we love new features, there's this almost universal response to anything that's new that comes along, and that's usually fear and uncertainty and doubt, skepticism, all those sorts of things. If you just look about all the technology that's come before us, if you just look at the last 100 years, we've had telephones and we've had cars and we've had radios and we've had TVs. But when those things came along, it wasn't that people thought, oh wow, there's a car over there, that's fantastic, now we can get around quicker. People were terrified of these machines that were barreling down the street at 20 k's an hour. One of the rules was if you had a car, is you had to have somebody walking in front of that car with a red flag to warn people to get out of the way. And that's just how it is. Any technology that comes along, it's always clunky, it doesn't work very well, we don't know how it's going to fit into our lives, and yet as time goes by, it evolves and it improves, and then suddenly we realize our friends are talking about it, and suddenly it becomes available, it becomes mainstream, and there are consumer applications for it. And then we begin to embrace it. If you think about the internet, now I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember before there was an internet. You know, once upon a time there was no internet, hard to believe. But when the internet came along, it was the same thing. This technology that is strange and unusual. And who's in those chat rooms talking to my kids? You know, this thing that potentially could allow terrorists and money launderers or whatever it is to now be able to communicate. The internet wasn't this thing that we all embraced. It was this frightening prospect. And look where we are today. How do we create a little digital token or cash thing that we can now keep as cash and we can send it to anybody around the world, like Fazam was talking about, easily, without having to go through this complicated set of intermediaries that add trust issues, that add costs and all that sort of thing. And so for 20 years, researchers and scientists and developers and economists have been trying to figure this out. So it's inevitable that one day such a thing was created. And now, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, 2009, somebody came up with this idea. They said, listen, I figured it out. I've figured out a system where we can now do this. We can now move money around the world. But it's been a new thing. It's a new strange idea. This idea that you can now have this token that represents money. And if you think about what money is, you know, in the olden days, money used to be something valuable, intrinsically valuable. Gold, for example. And as Fazam said, nowadays we have this paper money. Now, in the olden days, paper was fine. It was a little certificate that represented something of value like gold. But today we don't have that. Today we just have this system that we've all been sold into since 1971. Well, imagine if all of us could now bring all of us have laptops, all of us have devices. Imagine if we could now collect all the unused storage on our hard drives and be able to rent it out to people that we don't even know with these little micro payments with this digital cash. Suddenly you don't need Google Drive, you don't need Dropbox. And there's a whole lot of industries when you start thinking about digital payments being peer-to-peer, how they're going to be disrupted and how they're going to change. So this is not just something that's going to change central banking, and it certainly is, because central banks for 45 years since 1971 and even prior to that have been very involved in managing this financial system, this money system. Now we have this cloud system that we all are going to be embracing soon, I hope. And you're going to see how it's not just going to mean convenient payments. It's going to mean fundamental disruption to so many businesses and industries that we rely on and depend on. So as Fazam said, take it seriously. Think about the internet and think about all the innovations that have come before and realize when there's something new that starts shaking the earth, don't immediately say, oh, that's ridiculous. Have an open mind, because count on it, in the next 10 years there's going to be another innovation that comes along that's going to confuse and doubt you and make you fearful and suspicious, and yet it's going to completely transform your lives again. Here we have another potential one. Now the blockchain, before I'm going to end on this, what is the blockchain? Well, the blockchain is just what we call the technology that makes currency, Bitcoin, possible. And there's a lot of interesting work in the idea of using this blockchain for other things. If you want an analogy, we have the internet, and we have websites on the internet. We have email on the internet. We've got social media. We've got voice over IP. Well, blockchain is like the internet. Bitcoin is like the email on top of the internet. So if you're wondering what the difference was, blockchain just makes Bitcoin possible.